Sharon, that was great. So I'd like to ask you about the bigger bath. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, the bigger bath. I had this idea once Marek and you were talking to me about the Bath Folk Festival. It would be really nice to write a piece of music specifically and specially for Bath Folk Festival, and just to raise awareness about it, get people involved, playing, singing, dancing, whatever. And I started to think about Bath, the bigger aspects of Bath. I like baths. I'm a bath girl rather than a shower girl. I like the Roman baths,
Me too.
all of that.
Yeah.
And I love all the history, I love the architecture. And when you think about Bath, it's a very kind of cool, fashionable place, very affluent, very beautiful. But what really struck me last year from being at your festival was I had to get the train in from Bristol into Bath to come for various concerts and sound checks. And I passed quite a few homeless people.
Yes.
And some of them were selling big issues, some of them were begging, and some of them were just there, really. And I'm interested in homelessness and homeless people, and I buy the big issue every so often, and I like to talk to the person who's selling it to me and what their background is, because everybody's got a story. So I was thinking about this, and some of the stories came out were really blew me away, and I thought about writing a piece of music, and it was totally inspired by one particular guy who was homeless, and he was chatting with one of the vendors. He wasn't a vendor himself for the big issue, and he was an alcoholic.
Right.
And my brother was an abusive alcoholic, and my uncle was an alcoholic, and so there's been a lot of that in my family. There's a lot of it in Irish families and musical families and Scottish families. All that stuff can be very tragic. So I was talking to him about the idea of being an alcoholic, and I said, so why aren't you working for the big issue? And he said that he would want to work for the big issue, but he wasn't in a state where he could handle his alcoholism enough to be responsible. But he had worked out that he had 3 hours a day where he didn't need a drink. So he could last up to 3 hours, and then he had to go drinking or binging or whatever again. But there was 3 hours that he could be quite, as he called it, sane. And he said in those 3 hours, he decided to give those 3 hours to a friend of his, and she was a single mother, homeless, with a little girl. And so he could look after her little girl responsibly, while she went to beg, got shopping, did whatever she needed to do. And the little girl was in safe care. And then various conversations ensued, and we talked about the idea of happiness. Does money bring you happiness? Does a home bring you happiness? All this kind of stuff. And he said to me that happiness to him at that point in his life was this little girl who trusted him. She didn't judge him.
No.
And she loved him so much, she blew him tiny kisses.
Oh.
And I was nearly in tears. Those tiny kisses gave him hope that he would one day turn his addiction around, his life around, and he would get there. And I totally believed him. I just thought it was amazing. Anyway, so that's about a year ago, and then this idea of a piece of music came up, which is why I'm calling it the bigger Bath, because we all think of Bath as being a very safe, beautiful, affluent place, but there's a growing number of homeless people, and there's underprivileged people, there's people who are skint in Bath. It's the bigger Bath, it's the real world that we're trying to talk about. So this piece of music has now become an epic.